Understanding Aikido, Martial Context, Part 3. So in the latter videos we had talked about what martial context is, so it's the situation you're going to be using your martial art in. How there are many different martial contexts, right? So there's situations involving weapons, there's unarmed situations, there's multiple attacker situations, different environments to be fighting in, many different contexts in which you can possibly be using the word martial art to describe a system for. And there's also an interest for some reason in the modern world for when we say the word martial art to be describing a one-on-one unarmed situation. And within this realm of one-on-one unarmed situations, very recently mixed martial arts has appeared to do a nice job of dominating this conflict or this context and showing that we really have kind of figured out the most important parts to this context. So for the unarmed one-on-one context, all the things that are going to work the best. And MMA is no doubt one of the best avenues to take to study that right now. But there are other contexts, and MMA hasn't helped us understand these other contexts. So, for example, what MMA did within the realm of unarmed one-on-one, it helped us figure out some of the subcontexts, right? So, what happens when a kickboxer versus a regular boxer? Is punching so important that the kickboxer really doesn't have a big advantage? Or does the kickboxer have such an advantage with kicking that he's able to beat the regular boxer up? And questions like this have been answered for us by MMA. Within that context, unarmed one-on-one, MMA has done a great job of figuring that out for us. What's important and valid. However, there are other contexts. So for example, when someone has a sword, MMA hasn't told us a lot to do with someone with a sword, or with someone with a gun, or if you're fighting in a crazy situation in the dark, or if you're fighting in the cold, or if you're fighting and someone comes out behind you and you didn't expect the person to be there. In uncontrolled situations, MMA hasn't done a great job of helping us understand them better. Aikido has another context that I believe Aikido does a great job of explaining to us and telling us the techniques we're going to need for. And this context is two-part. It's multiple attacker and weapon-oriented. So weapon-oriented means that it could be I'm armed, or you're armed, or we're both armed. It could, and multiple attackers means we're always suspecting that there's going to be another person involved. So we're never just focusing in on one person and it being just us and them. So, looking at this context versus MMA, you can see these are dramatically different contexts. In fact, they're kind of opposite in every way. One-on-one unarmed is exactly the opposite of armed or weapon-oriented and multiple attackers. So you can't expect one context to answer questions about the other. So Aikido, being a martial art that's very focused on armed multiple attacker situations, is going to do miserably in a situation where there's just one person and we're unarmed. Now, it might seem at first like that's not true, because you might say, well, if you can beat up multiple people while they're armed, then how come you can't deal with one person one-on-one? And that is a way of looking at it, but kind of a fallacious way of looking at it. There are specifics about the situations that will change what's going on. So for example, when I'm specifically trying to compete against a person, that's very different than trying to survive a situation. So if I'm in an MMA ring with somebody and my solution is to just keep getting away from them, to keep moving away from them so they can never do anything to me, and I'm not going to hurt them, but I'm just going to keep moving away, I'm going to lose the MMA match because I'm running from the other person and we're there to compete. We're there to physically, specifically compete. However, in a life or death situation where I manage to avoid someone and never get killed, that's a win for me. That's a big victory for me. So understanding what the differences are and why those differences are important is the first key to understanding Aikido and what's important about it. So we're going to go ahead and make one more addition to this. The next video is going to cover what the specifics are and why you can see that Aikido is a weapons-oriented system dealing with multiple attackers versus a one-on-one unarmed situation, and why techniques for one might not necessarily be good techniques for the other. I'm Christopher Hein. Thanks a lot for watching.